Chapter 101. Later on, Song Yu met Sun Hugwang at an auction. He was sitting in the third row, wearing a suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He had fair skin and a gloomy temperament. Song Yu paused for a few seconds and quickly looked away. After confessing everything to Xie Sui, his attitude towards the scumbag changed from gnashing his teeth to not looking at him. In this life, Sun Hugwang knew that Xie Sui was Xu Qiao's child. When he saw the familiar face, he only felt sad. Now that Xie Sui had been acknowledged by the Xie family, he did not dare to have such crazy thoughts. The tragedy of his previous life was destined not to repeat itself. Therefore, there was no need to waste time on unimportant people. In the days that followed, the two of them spent more time alone together. Song Yu picked up his straight-A student persona again. He took out a pile of homework that was about to turn moldy and studied with his boyfriend. There was actually not much homework left for him during the winter break. He was also secretly sending the answers in the class group. Song Yu did not want to use his brain. He copied and looked at the answers as he copied and corrected the mistakes. He took a picture and sent it to the class group. Your husband brother Yu. Picture, lights like back then? Wok, thank you brother Yu. Ching Ning, wow, thank you for your hard work. Flower, Ma Xiaoding did not receive a reply from him last time, so she took the initiative to curry favor in the class group. Sadako does not forget the well digger. What is brother Yu doing now? Your husband brother Yu, studying. Sadako does not forget the well digger, wow. She responded very exaggeratedly. Song Yu put his phone aside and began to immerse himself in his book again. Song Weining came in to deliver fruit to him. She happened to see his chat page and was shocked. Your husband brother Yu? What kind of lousy name is that? Song Yu stopped writing. He was reminded that he had not changed his name in a long time. This name had attracted too many bad girls, but now that he was taken, he had to put an end to them seriously. Song Yu, then change it for me. It's best if it's not popular with girls. Song Weining's face was full of disdain. Not popular with girls? Then there's no need to change. I think your current one is quite annoying. Song Yu rolled his eyes and stuffed a grape into his mouth. Then, he clicked into the forum, randomly found a post, and showed it to Song Weining. She wanted to show her how popular her brother was now. Song Weining burst into laughter when he saw this. Are the girls in your school so fun? Song Yu asked her while eating fruit. What? Song Weining, I'll read it to you. Song Yu, I've already aborted the child. You can spend the new year in a city in peace. Song Yu almost choked on the grape. That idiot was trying to ruin his reputation. Song Weining clicked in and laughed uncontrollably. Oh, I was wrong. It's actually not a girl, it's a guy. Ha 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 ha, you can actually make a man pregnant. There's nothing you can't do, little brother. Song Yu snatched the phone away. This message was probably just a cheap sentence from someone who wanted to make fun of him and ruin his reputation. Some people in the back row started to follow the trend. The latest post. Song Yu, study hard. I've already given birth to the child and gave it to Xie Sui to raise. I don't want it if it's not yours. A lot of information was contained in this short sentence. He didn't know who had cheated on who. Song Yu, dream on. Song Weining couldn't stop laughing. You're really a scumbag. The title of the #1 scumbag in Jing City First High School was probably created by this group of people. Song Yu clicked out and said, it's okay. His account is already gone. Hurry up and think of a name for me. I'm going to change it. Song Weining, don't you have a girlfriend? Why don't you change it to a couple name? When Song Yu thought of that scene, the corners of his mouth twitched. Forget it. Song Weining, if you don't want to be pestered by girls, then make it cute or serious. Give me your phone, I'll change it for you. After giving her the phone, Song Weining changed his online name to Yu Ren Shu. At the same time, he sent a period in the class chat group to announce it to the world. Song Yu, met someone unworthy? Song Weining, they're unlucky to have met you. What do you think? Doesn't it suit your scumbag temperament? Song Yu laughed and chased Song Weining out. He took out his phone and changed it back. Everyone was online during the winter break. All of a sudden, there were discussions. Playing wild at 90. Brother you, what did you change your name to? Met someone unworthy? It's Wanwan. Fuck, brother you're in love. As a Chinese class representative, Jiang Chunian was dumbfounded and copied the explanation from Baidu. Lights are like old times, virtuous, kind and beautiful. It refers to a woman who married a bad husband. Strong knowledge. Brother you, who did you marry? Song you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xie Sui probably had some free time now. When she saw the class chat group, she privately messaged him. Xie Sui, met someone unworthy? Song Yu explained, my sister just changed it casually. At this moment, Ma Xiaoding spoke in the class chat group to make a good impression. Last time, he guessed something that he shouldn't have guessed correctly and was almost blacklisted by Brother Yu. Now, of course, he had to help Song Yu keep the secret. Sadako does not forget well digger, don't think too much. Look carefully, okay? It's Yu Ren who is unworthy, not unworthy. Qing Ning, Brother Sadako, what do you think? Sadako does not forget well digger, I'll explain it literally. Brother Yu is not a good person. Song Yu, haha. At the same time, Xie Sui probably saw it too. She smiled and replied. Xie Sui, oh, so it's me who met someone unworthy. Song Yu sent her a knife emoji. Then, Ma Xiaoding in the class chat group. Your husband Brother Yu, did you read your fortune? Ma Xiaoding shuddered. Sadako does not forget well digger, QWQ, widow, ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. Ma Xiaoding, hurry up and go back into the well and don't come out. Everyone probably discovered his intention to change his name. Lights like back then, Brother Yu, I'll change it for you. Don't use unworthy idioms. Why don't you just settle down with Sui Yu? Lights like back then, bah, I'll just go with the flow. It's Wanwan, you've been exposed. Song Yu remembered that Jiang Chunian's signature was the origin of her online name. The lyrics of a song, Lights Like Back Then, Bright Moon Like First Seen, coincided with her real name. Why am I bothered by this now? Song Yu felt that he had nothing better to do. But looking at his chat with Xie Sui, the more he scrolled up, the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. It began to snow heavily in the late winter. Under his and Song Waning's repeated training, the parrot that was full of greasy words of love had finally become a greasy talker and a thorn in Chairman Song's side. But it was good to fight poison with poison. When Chairman Song read the newspaper, he could just argue with the parrot. He didn't have to engage in meaningless conversations with them. Mama Song finished her work early and was learning to cook with the nanny at home. Her brother was coming back soon, and everything was going well. Before the new year, another thing happened in a city. Xie Lingshu was engaged. The person she was engaged to was the second son of the Lin family, an average-looking, gentle, and down-to-earth man. The Lin family was a second-tier wealthy family like the Shu family, but Xie Lingshu's status in the Xie family was actually equal. She posted many photos of her and Lin Chen on her private social media platform, saying that they had been in a relationship for 3 years. Now, they had finally come to fruition, which could be considered as a whitewash of the previous rumors. The engagement party was held in the main house. Before Song Yu went, his father warned him. Chairman Song told him not to run around and to follow him closely. The hidden meaning of don't run around was actually stay away from the boy of the Xie family. Okay. Mema Song had been studying recipes recently. When she was tying Chairman Song's tie, she asked casually, I want to cook something tomorrow. Is there anything you want to eat? It was cold outside in the late winter. Song Wanning took a step forward and shrank her neck. She quickly retreated and asked the servant to go upstairs to get her a cloak. Hearing this, she remembered her mother's dark cuisine and rolled her eyes. Mom, I want to drink hot water. Just boil a pot of hot water for me tomorrow. Don't torture yourself and don't torture us. Mama Song's face was expressionless. She pulled hard to show her anger. Chairman Song became the victim. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Are you trying to strangle me? The servant in the house opened the cage, and the parrot immediately flew out. Song Yu was hit by the parrot before he opened the car door. He smacked his mouth and scolded, "Do you want to die?" The parrot chattered, "Looking at the stars at night, Dona's glabella is dark." "How unlucky." Song Yu spat twice and held the parrot upside down. He said to his mother impatiently, "Mom, I want to drink parrot soup." "Stew it." The parrot widened its eyes. Song Weiniang was the first to disagree. She pushed him into the car. "I won't allow it. Xiaolan is so cute. How can you stew it? Then braise it." "You can't do that either. Are you going or not?" "Stop dawdling. I want to see the handsome boy of the Xie family." "Hurry up." Song Yu got into the car and thought to himself, "What do you mean the handsome boy of the Xie family is your sister-in-law? Do you understand?" Hearing their conversation, Chairman Song's face was gloomy. He snorted and loosened his tie. The parrot slowly flew to his shoulder and said, "Family misfortune, oh family misfortune. The sky is going to rain and the mother is going to get married. The son has grown up and the father has no choice. The daughter has grown up and the mother has no choice." Chairman Song was furious. "Shut up." Mema Song stood at the door and smiled helplessly as she watched them leave. The venue for Xielingshu's engagement party was huge. The whole garden was decorated with colorful balloons, flowers, champagne, and many tables. Besides the photographers, there were also reporters. Looking at the situation, Xielingshu wanted to make a big deal out of it. After handing in the invitation card and entering the venue, Song Yu's first reaction was to look for Xie Sui. He looked around and did not see anyone. She rushed back as if she was asking for trouble. Song Yu met them at the door. Xielingshu was stunned. Her expression returned to normal and she smiled gently. "Third young master Song, are you here to look for a Sui?" Song Yu nodded perfunctorily. "Yes." Xielingshu said, "A Sui is in the study. She's chatting with her father." "Third young master Song, do you want to go somewhere else first?" All of a sudden, Xielingshu and her best friend's expressions changed as they stared straight behind him. Song Yu heard footsteps. He turned around and saw Qin Qiuyun alone. She was wearing a long black dress and a cashmere shawl. She was wearing black lace gloves and holding a bag. As the former mistress of this house, Qin Qiuyun looked out of place. Xielingshu reacted quickly and greeted her warmly. "Third sister-in-law." Qin Qiuyun also smiled. There were some wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She said softly, "It's all in the past. I'm not your third sister-in-law anymore. You don't have to call me that." "Lingshu, congratulations." "Thank you." Xielingshu still had to perform in front of the media with Qin Qiuyun later. Of course, she pretended to be obedient. "In my heart, you're my third sister-in-law in this life." "Third sister-in-law, are you coming in to rest?" Qin Qiuyun said, "Yes, I didn't rest well last night. Arrange a guest room for me. I want to rest first." Xielingshu said, "Okay. Third sister-in-law, I'll take you there." Her best friend maintained a stiff fake smile on the side. Qin Qiuyun's gaze fell on Song Yu. They had met at the mountain temple that time. However, Qin Qiuyun acted as if she had lost her mind. Today, she was much more normal. She asked softly like an elder, "Young Master Song, are you here to rest too?" Song Yu said, No. I came in to look for someone. I didn't find her, so I went out first." Qin Qiuyun smiled. Her pupils were a little bigger than normal. The white of her eyes was smaller. When she stared at people, it was always scary. Song Yu couldn't avoid her. It wasn't because he was afraid, but because he felt uncomfortable. Song Yu didn't want to disturb Xie Sui, so he went outside and sat first. Perhaps Xie Xinian didn't want to see Qin Qiuyun or let Xie Sui see his ex-wife. In any case, he didn't appear at the engagement party. After the banquet started, Xielingshu and Lin Chen met each other's families and sat down to eat. The reporters took a few photos and went out. The rest of the celebrities in a city watched Xielingshu and Qin Qiuyun chat happily. They were confused by the unpredictable relationship between the two families. The banquet lasted until night time. Song Yu was surrounded by a group of people of the same age. They were all rich young masters. They surrounded him and laughed. They said that he had finally recovered from his illness and came out to meet people. Did he still remember when they drank together when he was young? Song Yu had a perfunctory and cold smile on his face. He was very polite, but his attitude was that he didn't want to talk to them. Zhao Ziyu sat at the side. As the only eldest grandson of the Zhao family, he was much more popular than Song Yu. However, his aura was cold today, so no one dared to approach him. After drinking 2 glasses of champagne in silence, Zhao Ziyu stood up and walked over. He patted the shoulder of a young man who was talking to Song Yu and said in a low voice, "I have something to say to Song Yu." The young man was stunned. He looked into Zhao Ziyu's dark brown eyes, touched his nose and stepped back. Song Yu sat on the swing. When the man was talking, he was chatting. It was a 4-person group of him and Xie Sui, Ma Xiaoding, and Shi Bowen. "Your husband brother Yu, let's stop talking. An annoying person is here." Bowen strong knowledge. "Brother Yu met someone in a city that you don't like." "Your husband brother Yu, yes, he even found us." Ma Xiaoding was very angry. "Sadako does not forget the well digger, that's too much. Brother Yu's underlings are all in Jing City. Brother Yu, tell me his name. I'll help you vent your anger." Song Yu glanced at Zhao Ziyu who was sitting on the chair next to him. Why would Ma Xiaoding help him vent his anger? He was God's favored one, the chosen one. "Your husband brother Yu, don't. You can't beat him. Sadako does not forget the well digger. Do you look down on me? Sadako does not forget the well digger. Do you know how many cars are parked at the door every day, waiting for me to go out?" Shi Bowen was speechless and complained. "Bowen strong knowledge, is there a row of shared bicycles downstairs?" Song Yu was amused by them. He turned off his mobile phone and was about to get up and leave. Zhao Ziyu's voice sounded. "Let's talk about Xie Sui." Song Yu stopped and said with a playful smile, "Sorry, I don't discuss my boyfriend's hobbies with other men." Zhao Ziyu looked at him deeply and said with a smile, "Or, let's talk about the system." Song Yu was silent. He was angry in his heart. In fact, he wanted to grab Zhao Ziyu's collar and force him to say it. But his reason told him not to. "Okay, go ahead." He sat on the swing again obediently. He felt that 008 had come back, but he chose to lean over Zhao Ziyu. Zhao Ziyu said, "I don't know how these things appeared, but Xie Sui has been targeted by them. The disaster is not something you can solve." His eyes were brown, like a dry well, reflecting the ancient trees. "Song Yu, so?" Zhao Ziyu said calmly, "So, do you want to wait for death?" It was probably because this matter had been bothering him for too long. He could also be calm in front of Zhao Ziyu. He suppressed his temper and smiled lightly. "You know about the system, so do you also know about gentle control?" Zhao Ziyu was silent for a moment, then he chuckled and said in the same mocking tone as Xie Sui, "The Book of Destiny?" Song Yu said, "That's the real world." Zhao Ziyu, "Yes." Song Yu said lightly, "Xie Sui is the main character in the book. I've been thinking about what they want. It must be according to the plot. I don't believe that one person can affect the whole world. I'm more inclined." His light-colored pupils reflected the cold light of the sky, and his tone was slow. "Xie Sui is outstanding enough in this world to become the main character, the child of destiny. And all the plot in gentle control is just the wishful thinking of the main god of the system to get something from him." Zhao Ziyu didn't deny it and said softly, "But for you, there's no solution. Unless you leave Xie Sui." Song Yu, if he wasn't here to discuss with him how to solve the system and the main god, then what was he here for? Song Yu looked at him strangely. "What do you want?" Zhao Ziyu, "I want to save you." Song Yu sneered. "You're crazy." Zhao Ziyu, "I made a mistake in my previous life, and I want to make up for it in this life." Song Yu, "Maybe you can believe me. I never wanted to be your rival in love." The banquet had been going on for a long time. Xie Sui sat on the sofa by the window in the study. Xie Xinian sat on the other side of the desk and asked, "Do you want to acknowledge your grandparents?" Xie Sui looked down. "Both are fine." Outside the window, it was lively and noisy. Xie Sui's finger swiped on the screen and clicked on a software, but it was a surveillance video. Xie Xinian said, "I want to marry your aunt." Of course, This is just on the surface, so that you can have a better reputation in the Xie family in the future. She won't be your stepmother. I won't live with her, and I won't let her get pregnant. She agreed. Xie Xinyan's deep affection and heartlessness for women were always very obvious. It was just that Xu Shuren's ambition was to enter this hell, and he wouldn't let her get what she wanted. Xie Sui said casually, yes. His line of sight shifted, and he finally saw the scene that he had expected. In his previous life, Qin Qiuyun went crazy and wanted to kill Xie Lingshu at all costs. This time, at Xie Lingshu's engagement party, she saw that the woman who caused her son to wander around a foreign country was so happy. How could she let it go? Xie Lingshu invited a wolf into the house and reaped what she sowed. She felt that Qin Qiuyun was a stupid woman who fell in love, but Qin Qiuyun was also a crazy woman. On the second floor of the villa, in the corridor, two women appeared. Xie Lingshu walked in front, and Qin Qiuyun followed behind. Chapter 102. Xie Xinyan couldn't figure out his son's attitude. After a long silence, he said, all this time, it was your aunt who helped to deal with this matter. She was also the one who found the evidence back then. Xie Sui listened and sneered in her heart. She didn't answer him and looked at the surveillance camera. On the screen, Xie Lingshu resisted but was stopped by Qin Qiuyun. After inhaling the yellow powder, Xie Lingshu slowly fainted. Qin Qiuyun lowered her eyes. There was no joy on her face. Her face turned pale and she supported herself against the wall and retched. After vomiting for a long time, Qin Qiuyun took off her black gloves and wiped her mouth. Her expression was full of hatred and disgust. She muttered something and dragged Xie Lingshu out by the arm. From God's perspective, she looked like a real lunatic. Xie Xinyan said, I didn't think it through. I didn't know that Qin Qiuyun would arrange for a private detective to follow me and then find your mother. The temperature of the air conditioner in the study was a little high. The coffee on the table was steaming. The pages of the book made a slight sound, accompanied by the man's deep and regretful voice. Xie Xinyan said, I haven't regretted anything in my life. This is the only one. Xie Sui was not interested in listening to his inner monologue. She adjusted the surveillance camera and found a few places where Qin Qiuyun might have gone. Qin Qiuyun had been the mistress of the Xie family for so many years and knew the terrain like the back of her hand. The oppressive and unfortunate marriage of a rich family probably drove her crazy. She liked the dark and bloody. Back then, in the basement of the South City Guild Hall, she used a knife to cut half of his mother's face. It was the same now. He dragged Xie Lingshu to an abandoned underground storage room and opened the door with a key. The old and dusty secret room was broken into, and the dust accumulated with the creaking sound of the door opening fell all over him. Even if I was more honest with Xiao Xiao, the final result wouldn't be like this. Your mother must hate me very much. You're the only thing she left in this world. I'm compensating you to make amends so that I can see her calmly after a few decades. That's enough, Dad, Xie Sui interrupted his emotional narration and smiled. Do you want to watch the show with me? It got dark early in winter, but the banquet didn't end. Colorful lights were hung all over the treetops, pink petals were spread all over the ground, and balloons were tied into a bunch, creating a romantic scene. As the temperature dropped, Song Weining touched her arms and felt goosebumps all over her body. She looked around for Song Yu for a long time, but she still couldn't find him. She walked towards the Xie family's main residence. In the long corridor, she saw people running around in a hurry. It seemed that something had happened. She raised her eyebrows and listened carefully to their conversation. It seemed that the main character of the day had disappeared. He was not in the room or outside. Xie Lingshu was missing. Song Weining took a sip of the champagne in her hand. She didn't have any strong feelings about this kind of thing. It was normal for something to happen in the Xie family. She still remembered the picture that her best friend showed her. It was of old Master Xie's last wife, a female celebrity in her early 20s. Her photos on the internet were all bright and pure. Her eyes were ignorant of the world, and her smile was sweet and obedient. She was ignorant of the world and married a man who was old enough to be her grandfather. Maybe it was because of love. In the last photo that was accidentally taken of her, she was a completely different person. She was so thin that she was only skin and bones. Her eyes were wide open, and she was holding a doll in her hand. The doll's face and body were full of knife marks. The photo was not leaked, and only a few people knew about it. Her best friend said that the celebrity was pregnant, but she had a miscarriage. After the miscarriage, she went crazy. And it was most likely Xielingshu's doing. The Xie family's main residence was very big, but it was very cold. Not many people lived here, and old Master Xie rarely showed up. She didn't know what happened when she was alone with Xielingshu. Song Weining sometimes thought of Shu Qiao. She felt that if Shu Qiao didn't die in Jing City and married into the Xie family as she wished, her ending wouldn't be good. It might even be crueler. Did Xie Xinian really love her? Not necessarily. If he really loved someone, how could he put her in such danger? When a person died, all kinds of guilt and self-blame combined to make him have the illusion of deep love. Guilt and self-blame would fade with time. Probably after a few years, there would be a new Qin Qiuyun. She didn't know if the roses outside the corridor were a new species. They were still blooming in the winter and were as red as blood. Song Weining sighed in her heart and called Song Yu. Forget it. Why should she worry so much about other people's family matters? She'd better take her brother away from this place. You don't want to be a love rival, but want to be my son? Then there was nothing to talk about. Sure enough, Zhao Ziyu and the system god were in cahoots. Song Yu got up and ignored him. Looking at the time, she complained in her heart. They had been talking for almost an afternoon. Could Xie Xinian let go of her boyfriend? Zhao Ziyu's brown eyes looked at his back deeply. He opened his mouth and chose to be silent. He didn't say anything more. The system in his mind was about to die. Host, why did you tell him this? Zhao Ziyu said in a flat tone. He already knew. It doesn't matter if I say it or not. Your name is 008, right? There are no colleagues. It's you from the beginning to the end. It turns out that the one in Song Yu's mind is also you. The system originally had a stomach of angry questions. Being asked by him, it didn't know what to say and stammered. Zhao Ziyu said, 008, I actually agree with Song Yu's words. What do you want from Xie Sui? 008. The whole system's face was bitter as if it was going to cry. It thought for a long time and said, what are you asking me for? I don't know anything. Zhao Ziyu chuckled and said almost certainly, the author of Gentle Control is you. 008's breathing stopped, dead silence. Zhao Ziyu said slowly, how can a world be compressed into a book, and how can a book be expanded into a world? You can manipulate my mind, so you can manipulate others to play this farce with you. 008 retorted in a low voice. No, host, sometimes the evil of human nature is real. You were the only one who manipulated our consciousness in our last life. Zhao Ziyu smiled. I'm the only one who manipulated consciousness. What about other manipulations? Are there too many evil people around Xie Sui? From childhood, the people around him were almost crazy to humiliate him, from that teacher, to Wang Ci, to Qin Mo, to Sun Heguang. I don't believe that you didn't do anything. Something cold fell slowly, refracting the weak light. Zhao Ziyu reached out and caught the snowflake. The skin of his palm was cold and white, and the lines were very shallow. He watched it melt indifferently. Zhao Ziyu sneered and said lightly, manipulating my consciousness, you are not afraid of my backlash. 008 didn't answer the previous question, but he had a little confidence in this one. He said softly, host, we are one. As you said just now, there are too many evil people around Xie Sui. Haven't you thought about it? There are too few evil people around you. Zhao Ziyu sarcastically raised his lips. 008's attitude to Song Yu is the kind of anger that can't explode. He is more respectful and careful to Zhao Ziyu. If Xie Sui is the true God's favored child of this world, then you are the God's favored child nurtured by our postnatal plan. In the early stage of Xie Sui's growth and control, we gave you his luck. But later, he will become more and more powerful and difficult to control. You have to make Xie Sui fall in love with you, so that you can share his luck in the future and make it so smooth for you. 008 said, We have always been in a cooperative relationship. What we want is Xieshui's love and hate, you want Xieshui's luck. When he falls in love with you, we will leave this big world immediately and no longer intervene in anything here. Zhao Ziyu smiled and gave an evaluation, his eyes cold, interesting. He never knew that one day he would need to ask for another man's love with such a purpose. 008 knew he was angry. It shrank and shook its body, but it had already said all, so it was better to finish it in one go. Things have come to this, host, we can only do this strategy. Zhao Ziyu, how did you calculate that Xieshui and I will fall in love? 008 is not pretending to be confused now, weakly said. We have a set of algorithms about love and matching rules. The first result is that Xieshui is such a person. The one he likes should be a rival who is on par with him. Zhao Ziyu suppressed his nausea. Why choose me? It's better to choose Song Yu. There is no strategy at all. He will naturally fall in love. At the end, he lowered his eyes and looked a little bitter. 008 sighed. The first world, after our failure, we reflected on it, but in this world, anyone can be absorbed energy, only Song Yu can't. That boy is particularly special in this world, perhaps because he gathers all the love of Xieshui. But what they want is this love. Hatred is worth 100, love is worth 100, and neither is indispensable. 008 sighed. But it's time to end. 008 didn't dare to say the following words to Zhao Ziyu. No matter how dull it is, it knows that Zhao Ziyu likes Song Yu. The Lord God has issued the final operation instructions. In the end, what will happen, it doesn't know. They come and go to so many worlds. For the first time, they have the courage to try to absorb the love and hate of the Son of Destiny in the upper world and divide his energy. They are faced with such a dead end. This time, it was really a gamble. The Lord God had already used up more than half of its energy to create the book Gentle Control and change the fate line. He had used up another half of its energy to turn back time and send Song Yu away to arrange reincarnation. Almost all the energy obtained from the 3,000 small worlds in the past is used this time. If it succeeds, then the energy obtained from Xieshui is 10 times the total of the previous. If it fails, no, can't fail. Song Yu received a call from his sister. Where are you? Song Yu said, Xie family, don't worry, I didn't leave you behind. Song Weining rolled her eyes. I'm here in the corridor, behind the main hall of the last banquet. Come on, let's go quickly. Something happened to the Xie family again. Song Yu walked in the garden, heard her complicated tone, and laughed. What's the matter? Song Weining said, Xie Lingshu is missing. Song Yu was stunned. Xie Lingshu was missing. He didn't know why, but the first thing that came to his mind was Qin Qiuyun's eyes. She turned her head to look at him. Her pupils were bigger than the average person's, and the white in her eyes was smaller. It was dark and cold, very scary. Not long ago, what was he thinking? How dare Xie Lingshu invite Qin Qiuyun? Why would Qin Qiuyun come? He said to his sister, then I'll help them look for it. Song Weining, ? He could feel her anger through the phone. If you dare to interfere in this matter, you won't have a sister today, Song Yu. Actually, he just said it for fun. The bodyguards and servants of the Xie family were all there, and there were surveillance cameras everywhere. They would definitely find her. There was no need for him to be a hero. Moreover, Qin Qiuyun and Xie Lingshu, one was the murderer who killed Xieshui's mother, and the other was the viper aunt who worked with old Master Xie to force him to death in Xieshui's memories. It was a dog-eat-dog affair. Let them be entangled in their own affairs. Song Weining saw that he didn't speak, so she snorted. Don't mess with me. Song Yu lazily said to Yang Yang, I'm in the garden now, walking towards you. Give me some trust, I'm so The scream broke the silence of the night. A woman's shrill scream came from not far away. Song Yu was in the garden between the two villas of the Xie family. The moment the scream sounded, he said, wait. He immediately hung up the phone. He didn't want his sister to be afraid or worried. It was Xie Lingshu's voice. It was full of fear and despair, and it sent chills down one's spine. Song Yu put his phone in his pocket and looked coldly in the direction of the voice. It was in a corner of the garden, behind a house to be exact. He strode over with his long legs. Who knew if Chin Choyun would hurt the innocent when he went crazy? The night was still brightly lit. Fine snow swirled from the sky and circled around a lake. Song Yu saw Xie Lingshu stumbling out of the main door. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was covered in blood. Her original appearance couldn't be seen clearly. There were also scratches on her arms. Tears fell like rain, and her expression was deranged. She seemed to have used all her strength to escape in a hurry. She didn't have time to take off her high heels and kicked them off. The bandage was still tied around her ankle. Help! Help! After screaming and shouting crazily, she seemed to have used up all her strength. A desperate cry for help came from her throat. When she saw Song Yu, tears flowed out of her eyes. Song Yu frowned. As she ran over, the heels of her high heels scraped against the cobblestones. She fell to the ground and then broke down and cried loudly. Her broken voice was pieced together to form a cry for help. Help me! Woo woo! Help! Behind her, Chin Choyun slowly chased after her. She didn't seem to be worried that her prey would go far. Black dress, black gloves. Blood splattered on them wouldn't be obvious. Her expression was strange and deranged. She held a fruit knife in her hand, and the knife was covered in blood. What she wanted was never Xie Lingshu's life. She wanted Xie Lingshu to suffer a fate worse than death. She had nothing now. Her husband was gone. Her son was gone. Evil women should all die. Xu Qiao had to die. Xie Lingshu had to die too. Oh, she was going to die soon too. Xie Lingshu fell by the lake. Her fingers dug into the pebbles. She raised her head and looked at Song Yu with her blooded face in despair. Her tears and blood mixed together. Chin Choyun held the knife. Her heart was calm. She knew clearly what she was doing, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She couldn't see anyone other than Xie Lingshu. Her heart was beating violently. From the moment Xie Lingshu broke free, she knew that everything would end. She would use this knife to stab Xie Lingshu's heart madly. Once wasn't enough. She would stab 10, 20, 30, 100 times. She would crush this evil woman's heart, stab it into pieces, make her cry out in pain and beg for mercy. In the end, she would die on the verge of death. Only then would her hatred be appeased. Song Yu sighed helplessly in his heart. He didn't even know how lucky he was. He still couldn't bear to see someone die in front of him. Look at your ex-wife. In the surveillance video, a woman in a black evening gown was holding a knife. Her eyes were like a venomous snake. She smiled strangely and slashed at the woman's face. Xie Sui said lightly, "Are all women's revenge methods so simple?" Xie Xinian was stunned. He looked up, his eyes filled with pain and shock. It was as if he was meeting his son for the first time. It was also as if it was the first time he truly felt the pain of his heart. Everything Chin Choyun did to Xie Lingshu was what she did to Xu Qiao. He closed his eyes tiredly, stood up, and walked out. Go and call your grandfather down. Xie Sui turned off his phone and nodded with a smile. He looked at the snow outside. It was snowing again. Fortunately, there wasn't a storm. He had always hated rainy days, especially today. In the long corridor, Song Weining heard the scream from Song Yu's phone. Her whole body stiffened, and then she heard the busy tone. She hurriedly tried to press the button to call back, but all she got was the reply that the call couldn't go through. Her mind went blank. The wine glass in her hand shattered on the ground. Song Weining trembled. She lifted her long dress and ran out. She rarely had such premonitions. There were no exact emotions. Most of them were confusion and sadness. She even skipped the step of fear and panic. She couldn't help but feel sad. Perhaps it was the bond of blood between siblings, or perhaps it was some other mysterious thing. It was a wonderful feeling. She first had such a premonition when she was 9 years old. She was hugging a doll to sleep. Her uncle bought a new island. Her brother and brother went there. She was the only one who couldn't go because she had a cold. She was so angry. She threw a tantrum with her mother and didn't speak for several days. Suddenly, on a stormy night, she couldn't fall asleep. She wore a nightgown and hugged her doll. She went upstairs and knocked on her mother's door. Mama Song opened the door helplessly. She touched her soft hair and asked her what happened. She threw herself into her mother's arms and said in a trembling voice, "I'm scared." Mama Song smiled and said, "Scared of thunder?" She was 9 years old. Song Yu was 6. No one knew what happened on the island that year. The next morning, they found Song Yu sleeping in his pajamas by the beach. Then he was sick for 10 years. My brother. Her world was a blur as she ran. She walked into the garden and looked around. She saw a man. She grabbed his hand from behind. Her vision was so blurry that she couldn't even see his face. She asked in a trembling voice, "Have you seen my brother? He's wearing a white suit. He's very tall. He's near this garden." She was so sad that she couldn't speak. She was the daughter of the Song family. She was one of the top socialites in a city. It was the first time she was so embarrassed. The man seemed to be stunned. He was helpless. He naturally knew Song whinnying. He said softly, "Don't cry. I'll take you to him." A crazy woman was scary. But she was a woman after all. She couldn't compete with a man in terms of physical strength. Song Yu took a few steps forward and grabbed Chin Choyun's hand. He broke her arm and the knife fell to the ground. Chin Choyun seemed to have just noticed Song Yu. She became angry and bit his hand with red eyes. Song Yu pushed her head away. He was speechless. "Sister, if you're crazy, go to the hospital and get treated." Chin Choyun's vision became blurry and focused. She couldn't resist Song Yu. She couldn't struggle. Tears fell from her red eyes. His lips trembled, and that deranged expression was covered by overwhelming hatred and grief at this moment. Why? She deserved to die. She deserved to die. Xie Lingshu, who was on the ground, cried. Chin Choyun was crying too. She seemed to be crying about her sad and hateful life. Her voice was soft and desperate. "My life has been ruined. Xu Qiao took away my marriage and Xie Lingshu took away my family. My husband doesn't want me and my son abandoned me. The Qin family thinks I'm a disgrace. Everyone in a city is scolding me behind my back. But what did I do wrong? I'm the first wife. Doesn't the mistress deserve to die?" Her eyes were bloodshot. "This woman seduced my son and made me fall to this point. She caused me to fall to this point. Why does she have to live so well and happily? If I kill her, I'll die immediately. Evil people deserve retribution. I will die, I beg you." She knelt down and almost cried and begged Song Yu. "Let me go. Let me kill her. If I kill her, I'll die immediately. I beg you." Every word crashed into his ears, causing his eardrums to hurt. Xie Lingshu shook on the ground. "No, no, no." Song Yu felt a headache coming on because of this. He didn't want to know about the truth and falsehood of the Xie family's old affairs. His sister was right. If he stepped into this mess, he would be entangled and couldn't get away. No matter what he did, he would be in trouble. Song Yu called Xie Sui. But before he could get through, he heard Xie Sui's voice from behind. "Song Yu." Song Yu was stunned and turned around. Fine snow fell from the sky. This place was sandwiched between two villas. The lights were bright and the moonlight was cold. Xie Sui walked out of the main door. When he ran out, the weather was just very gloomy. The sand was turned over bit by bit. After a long time, the sky suddenly thundered and it started to rain. The rain was very heavy. He felt that he probably couldn't find it. He scratched his head and planned to go home, but he accidentally slipped on the beach. He ate a lot of sand. After spitting it out, he rubbed his eyes and saw an incredible scene. Was it a mirage? He saw purple air coming from the east and the sky clearing up. A tall man walked onto the island. He was as cold as an ice sculpture. His legs were long and slender. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes, but there was no gentleness in them. The sound of the rising and falling tides seemed to have stopped. There was only the man's voice between heaven and earth. It was cold and gentle. He whispered, "I've come to avenge you." The lake was very noisy. He seemed to hear his sister's voice. With a crying tone, it overlapped with all the messy things in his memory. Song Yu felt that he was held in someone's arms and leaned against the shore. In fact, the feeling of drowning was not bad. Probably the feeling of his soul being torn apart was too painful, so the physical pain was much lighter. He wanted to talk to Xie Sui and tell her not to be afraid, but it was too painful. 008, you're making trouble. When I really see you in person, I'll kill you. Oh, his eyelashes trembled, and he thought sadly in Xie Sui's arms. At that time, the birthday gift was given out as a farewell gift in Jingcheng, because Xie Sui's birthday was a painful day that she didn't want to mention. So he subconsciously didn't ignore or pay attention to it. But today, he couldn't forget. It was Xie Sui's birthday. Chapter 103. When Song Yu woke up, she was trapped in a blue cube suspended in the air. It was like a huge cage. The whole cage was made of a very strange material, constantly flowing with silver-white light. Next to it was a dark world. He looked down blankly and saw that his wrist was wrapped in a white tube, and the end was in the edge of the cube. It was a little too quiet all around. Song Yu was very calm. In this different dimension space, the sharp and stimulating pain before fainting was gone, and the feeling of the soul being twisted and torn was eliminated. He sat in the center of the cube and looked down at the thing on his wrist. The tube seemed to be wrapped around the surface of his wrist, but when he moved, he could feel the pain clearly. On the invisible side of the skin, there were many needle-like things, all penetrated into his blood vessels, as if they were going to suck something from him. Song Yu frowned. Host. In the space came the weak voice of 008, a timid and guilty tone that he had not seen for a long time. Song Yu ignored him and looked at his clothes. It was a hospital gown, so he should have fainted in the real world. Now he was in the hospital? Song Yu pulled up the corners of his mouth, which was the kind of familiar mocking smile that people who didn't know him were familiar with. But in a flash, he seemed to want to make the pain more real. He twisted his wrist and said to 008 calmly, "We are also old friends. Sit down and make it clear." 008 wanted to speak and then stopped. He shrank a little and chose to show up in front of Song Yu. Little by little, the data fused out. It was exactly the same facial features, light hair, light pupils, but 008 was clean and innocent like a little white rabbit. It was the same as Song Yu's first sight when he woke up in the ward. The sick and poor boy shook his body and sat quietly cross-legged opposite him. Their completely different temperaments made them seem more like twins. The elder brother was cold and the younger brother was soft. Song Yu looked at him quietly. 008's expression was quite complicated, and he sighed. Now that things had escalated to this point, there was no need to say anything more. It said, "Host, you can stay here for a while. We can't erase you anyway. When everything is over, we will send you back to your original world." After a pause, 008 added, "Songling's world." Song Yu asked, "End? When will it end?" He looked at his wrist and raised it. "You've sent me away twice, haven't you? I belong to this world. When I was 6 years old, you sent me away. When I was 15, I came back. Now, you want to send me away again." 008 choked. When he was distressed, he liked to bite his lips. His white teeth left a shallow mark on his pink lips. Song Yu said faintly, "Don't do such girly things with my face." 008, probably because he felt guilty, he couldn't get angry at Song Yu. There were only the two of them in the entire space. 008 frowned tightly, with a bitter expression, and said, "Who would have thought that things would come to this point? After this time, the Lord God is estimated to no longer dare to covet the power of the Son of Destiny in the world." Song Yu, Son of Destiny? Do you mean Xie Sui? 008 tried to laugh, but it was uglier than crying. Well, you can say that. What do you want to do? 008 slumped down and pitifully said, "We just want to collect some love value and hatred value. There's no need to be so troublesome." It stretched out its hands, spread them out in front of it, and slowly gathered a book in the palm of its hand. The book opened automatically, and lines of black words rolled out. It was gentle control. Song Yu was silent. 008 said, "My creator is a mad scientist." In the later interstellar era, it was generally believed that the spirit was the foundation of man, and the algorithm about the soul was found from the genetic code. So he proposed an idea of pursuing immortality and building a data spiritual world, so that after the death of the body, the soul could live there forever. The energy needed to build this virtual world became a problem. The resources of our world couldn't be enough, so he turned his eyes to other worlds. My birth, and even the birth of our whole system, was born because of this. But later, my creator suddenly gave up, as if he had realized something, and soon after, the world also perished. He is just an AI, an artificial intelligence. For the disappearance of a world, the annihilation of a high-level civilization, does not have much impact. This is the rule of the universe, and those past events will be sealed in the vast history. We were left behind in a lower world, and then we were picked up by someone, who is my current master. 008 stopped and didn't know what to say about his master. Master used to be miserable. After getting us, he began to change his luck. Unlike my creator, my master doesn't understand the truth of the magic cube, and he doesn't want to understand. What he wants from beginning to end is the luck of others. If you harvest all the love and hate of a person, you can hold his luck in your hands. He doesn't have the ability to collect the love and hate of the whole world like my creator, so he stares at the most powerful person. That is, the so-called protagonist, the one who is loved by the world's consciousness. We've been to many small worlds, and that's what we've done. We'll make some small changes based on that person's timeline. We'll arrange some evil people around him that he shouldn't have met. After collecting enough hatred points, we'll use data matching to find a soul lover. The system will enter the mind of the chosen person, manipulate his consciousness, and approach the main character. Then, we'll obtain all his love. Song Yu laughed when she heard that. If this was in a novel, it would probably be the life of Lei Feng. Sai Yi. He had even helped to think of the plot. An ordinary boy suddenly obtained a mysterious and powerful system one day, which allowed him to collect the luck of others. Then, he began his brilliant and extraordinary life. Your master is the Lord God that you keep talking about. Does he deserve to be called a god? 008 corrected, "You are not allowed to say that about my master." Song Yu said, "Gentle Control was written by you." 008 began to bite his lip again. Song Yu said, "Your master was able to arrange such a deranged plot." 008 said discontentedly, "The master has consulted a lot. This is the plot arrangement that can best inspire Xie Sui's hatred." Song Yu, "Oh." He asked, "What will happen to those people after your master takes away their luck?" 008 shook his head and said, "We don't know what happened after that." Song Yu asked again, "Do the protagonists of the previous world know your existence?" 008 shook his head again, "I don't know." People who are loved by the world's consciousness are very strong in mental strength. After finding out, they will bring us a lot of trouble. Song Yu was stunned. Suddenly, he was glad that when he confessed to Xie Sui, he also told 008 and the system. After knowing all the ins and outs, Song Yu calmed down. He had always been curious about the origin of the system. Sure enough, such technology belonged to the advanced civilization that had been destroyed by the universe. He was surprised at first. Why did he have to be despicably attached to a person's love and hate with such ability? Now he understands that he can do this series of disgusting operations, just a Lei Feng who suddenly got a treasure. Song Yu looked around and remembered 008's declaration of the so-called humane system at the beginning. He only felt that it was ironic, so you've always been a gang crime, making it mysterious. To put it bluntly, it's illegal invasion, forcibly occupying and stealing. 008 choked. In the idealism that its creator instilled in it, forcible possession and theft were wrong, but as a system, the first line of data written was absolute obedience. It didn't know how to refute, so it could only give up. Anyway, you will go to another world soon. You can think whatever you want. Song Yu looked at him a few more times, touched the tube on his left wrist with his right hand, and said lightly, "Why do you tell me everything?" 008 looked at him timidly, thought for a while, and was a little sad. "In fact, I like you very much, Song-yu smiled. Oh. Thinking that Song-yu's memory would be cleared at that time, 008 simply said, all the depression in his heart, my master's ambition is too big. How can the destiny of the world be easy to get close to? In the last life, Xie Sui was completely out of the plot, not only love, but also hate. A lot of the harm we planned, including him being driven out of the Xie family, being imprisoned, all didn't happen. He was too strong. Xie Sui, this person, seems to have no extreme emotions in his life, like a lack of feelings. We also harvested a little hatred when he was young and before he grew up. Later, when he grew up, he had no love, no hate, and everything was out of control. This book, Gentle Control, which was written as a reference, was completely invalid. After Song-yu listened, he said coldly, so you lied to me last time in the auditorium. 008 is reasonable, didn't you not believe a word? How can you be a liar? Song-yu, he believed it. He believed a little. He believed that they had always been friends in their last life. It's ridiculous to think about it all now. 008 said, of course, the hatred of the last life was full. After you died, I got Xie Sui's hatred from Zhao Ziyu and Qin Mo. Song-yu's eyes fell on the line of words. His eyes paused and he didn't speak. 008, that's why we must need the role of Song-yu. After sending you away, I still got into this shell as an autistic person for so many years. It's really strange to say that only you have love or hate about Xie Sui. We can't detect it, and we can't collect it. If it could be collected, it would have been solved long ago. There would be no need for so much trouble. So, for us, Xie Sui falling in love with other people is easy to solve, only you can't. In the previous world, it was difficult to collect hatred, but easy to collect love. This time, it's difficult to collect hatred, but it's even more difficult to collect love. After Song-yu opened the window to 008, he had nothing to hate about it. Now what he hated more was the person who controlled all this behind the scenes. He glanced at the cube around him. Only when he looked carefully could he find that there was a light purple 9-square pattern on it. Rubik's Cube. This was in a Rubik's Cube. The product of advanced civilization fell into the hands of a dark villain and became a weapon for him to seize other people's luck. He smiled, turned to look at 008, and asked, why must it be Zhao Ziyu? Isn't it easy to fall in love with other people? The tragedy of the last life has been caused. Zhao Ziyu and Xie Sui are enemies at first sight. Why do you force them to be together in this life? Why don't you choose someone else? When 008 mentioned this, he wanted to sigh again. You don't know how hard my master works. Luck is linked to energy. Data monitoring and Xie Sui will fall in love with the favored son of heaven who is evenly matched. Xie Sui is a person who is favored by the world. Where can he find someone who is equally matched with him? He can only create one. When he was a child, he got a little bit of Xie Sui's hatred, the division of luck. The master didn't use it on himself. All of it was given to Zhao Ziyu, who has the same spiritual power in this world. In the last life, it's the same in this life. Once you put it in, you won't stop. Song-yu was amused by the operation of the God King. He's really interesting. 008 and Song-yu are old friends, and he has been hurt by him many times. He puffed up his mouth and had nothing to say. Master's moves are wrong. He didn't send you away. When you came back, everything was in chaos. Later, Zhao Ziyu's memory was restored and my colleagues were arranged to go there. Alas, I'm convinced. At this point, I don't know what he is still clinging to. Maybe it's the gambler's psychology. Every time he operates in the upper world, he consumes a lot of energy. He used to have money, fame and fortune in his own world. Now his luck is zero. He is estimated to be no different from when he picked us up. Song-yu lowered his eyes and seemed to see the crazy and stupid master behind 008. After investing so much, how could he be willing to stop? But the more he gambled, the bigger he got. He was afraid that he would lose everything in the end. Thinking of this, Song-yu raised the corners of his lips with some banter. Raising his eyes looked at 008 coldly, and his voice was calm. Do you know why I came back? 008 spit out, Xie Sui's obsession. I think he was looking for death in his last life, and he was thinking about you before he died. But it's a new life. The thought before death still has so much power to pull you back. Song Yu thought, they really don't know. It's his obsession. Do you know why I came back in the summer when I was 15? 008's eyelids lifted, and the same face showed a child's confusion. Why, Song Yu said with a smile, because he was reborn in that summer, or he recovered the memory of his last life in that summer. 008 suddenly raised his head, and the data virtual brown eyes were lighter than Song Yu's own. He stared straight, and opened his mouth trembling. Song Yu said slowly, he has all the memories of his last life. How can you succeed? 008 disappeared, anxious and shocked. Song Yu took back his sight and looked at the book that was still in the air. Without the noisy 008, there was a terrible silence around him. He sat in such a blue hollow Rubik's cube, and there was no echo in the silent universe. He stretched out his hand, no longer let the book turn pages automatically, and closed the virtual gentle control. After a moment of silence, he turned it over from the beginning. It was like sitting in the ward at the beginning, reading this absurd and ridiculous story of abuse page by page. Now I understand that it's really abuse for the sake of abuse. Jing Cheng, an old house. Xie Sui wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, squatted in the corner of the corridor, and dealt with all the wounds before he dared to go upstairs. He came back late, Grandma Chen had fallen asleep, and the food on the table was cold. He put down his school bag, went to the table, and fought with the gangsters. His right hand was broken, and he couldn't hold the chopsticks at all. He could only eat the cold and bitter vegetables with his left hand. But his left hand was also injured, and there was a crack between the thumb and the index finger. It was very painful when he pulled it a little. Xie Sui stopped for a long time, put down the chopsticks, couldn't eat, and began to clean the table. He finally saved some living expenses, and tomorrow the Jingcheng No. 1 middle school will start. I hope everything will be all right. Song Yu looked at this line calmly for a long time, and his eyes were slightly red. Alas, his boyfriend was so miserable at the beginning. It didn't get better, and those idiots arranged a lot of bad people to be around you. He lowered his eyes, with tears in his eyes, and cried for the first time in this place where no one could see. All the memories came back. So everything was explained. How could he have such a real sense of disgust and anger for such a book? Why did he go straight to Xie Sui as soon as he was discharged from the hospital? With the opera and the gentle night wind as the background, the voice with a smile came through the ancient time. An assumption that seemed to be very ridiculous and not taken into consideration. If you had told me when you moved to Jingcheng with Aunt Shu, I would have come with you. Then my mother would have agreed. After all, my grandmother was here. Then I would have transferred to your school, your class, and become your deskmate. I would have been very good to you at that time, and protected you from those bad things and bad people. You see, I didn't break the promise. Just you wait. When you go back to the other small world, I won't let you have an easy time. Song Yu rubbed his fist and said, you don't have to wait for the next world. You brought your family and went through a lot of trouble to come to my world. How can I let you leave so easily? He tilted his head and said in a tone that seemed to be asking and teasing, you can't get Xie Sui's love and hate points from me. You can't get energy from me. Haven't you thought about the reason? The Lord God's breathing stopped. Song Yu remembered the conversation with 008. Do the protagonists of the previous world know of your existence? They don't know. The people who are favored by the world's consciousness are very strong in spiritual power. After they find out, they will bring us a lot of trouble. Song Yu smiled. He thought of 008's helpless appearance in front of him. He couldn't do anything and could only be anxious. I'm not the protagonist, but my spiritual power shouldn't be bad either. There was another sentence that Song Yu didn't say. The creator of the Rubik's Cube, before it was destroyed, should have thought that there would be such a day. The technology of a high-level civilization fell into the hands of evil people with evil intentions, and it became a disaster. If in that civilization, the soul had an algorithm, and love and hate also had a numerical value, this Lord God had done so much evil, and there would be a day when he would pay back. The Lord God was silent, and the atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme. The anger and despicable resentment in his heart were restrained. He looked at Song-yu from high above, like a coiled snake with its head raised. He didn't say a word. He hated Song-yu so much now that he didn't intend to send him to the original world. He wanted to trap him in this place forever. She would wait for Xie to calm down in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Then, he would fall in love with anyone and accumulate enough love points. The time in the Rubik's Cube was frozen. He was not afraid that he couldn't wait. He had now given up on Zhao Ziyu, who was not easy to deal with. He was waiting to take back the luck and energy that had been given to him in the beginning. Xie liked Song-yu. In the future, he could find someone with the same personality in the trichiliocosm to this world, and teach that person to capture Xie and collect love points from Xie. Then he would show all this to Song-yu, and let him see how his lover fell in love with others. Song-yu was using his spiritual power to open the Rubik's Cube with his bare hands. Each side was a 9-square grid, crisscrossed horizontally and vertically. He could feel that he could control some tiny particles in the air and turn them into weapons. This Rubik's Cube was a huge shell. It looked solid, but at the interface, it was as thin as a piece of paper. He reached out and touched those places. He could clearly feel the cold anger, irritation, killing intent, and deep negative emotions from hundreds and thousands of people. What did he say in front of him? Evil energy feedback. The king god did not notice the changes in the Rubik's Cube. He had never really understood or owned the Rubik's Cube. Stay here for the rest of your life, Song-yu. Do you want to see how your boyfriend falls in love with others in the future? Song-yu's expression was cold. He was disgusted and tired of the king god's words. His boyfriend was not so stupid and easy to capture if he fell in love with someone without knowing whether their feelings were real or fake. What would he use to capture them? Use his life to capture them. Song-yu looked up. A mirror appeared in front of him. There were many intermittent scenes in the mirror. His body froze slightly, and his scattered spiritual power stopped. The scene in the mirror was the man who had shattered all his pride and calmness in front of his sister after his death in his previous life. Behind him, the black rain was heavy, wetting the grass. Xie face was pale as she leaned over and kissed the tombstone. Song-yu's expression became sad. Many scenes flashed through the mirror. The last one was this life. After he fell into the water and fainted at the Xie family's house, Xie completely lost control. His cold and distant appearance collapsed. His eyes were red, and he was so fierce that he seemed to want to kill someone. Xie Lingshu was screaming, and his sister was crying. It was a mess. He was sent to the hospital. Xie was slapped by his father. The proud young man did not say a word. He lowered his eyes and repeatedly apologized. The parents always knew their children best. Chairman Song had been in the business world for so many years. Nothing could be hidden from him. His father probably saw all the twists and turns between him and Xie. Considering that he had just been discharged from the hospital for half a year, Chairman Song was worried about his health, so he pretended to be confused. Song-yu's eyes were slightly sore. He sighed. Sadness welled up in his heart. He immediately shook his head. Forget it. What's the use of looking at these? Let's break the Rubik's Cube first and kill this idiot. He promised Xie that he would go out. Xie's cold voice suddenly came from the mirror. Your name is 008, right? If you don't come out, I'll kill him now. Song-yu suddenly opened his eyes and looked up. There were 3 people in the mirror, Zhao Ziyu, Xie, and 008. It was a strange coincidence with the ending of his last life. In the empty corridor of the hospital. It was not a gun in his last life. This time, it was a knife. The knife reflected Xie's cold eyebrows and eyes. The smile on her lips seemed to be covered with darkness. The whole person was in a state of madness and paranoia. 008 left him. He should have been shocked by the news and hurried back to tell Zhao Ziyu. Zhao Ziyu could not die. So much energy had been poured into him, but he had yet to recoup it. Sure enough, Song-yu saw 008 get out of Zhao Ziyu's body in fear. The weak light blue body, the same appearance as him, was submissive. It seemed that 008 was scared silly. This seemed to make Xie Sui laugh. He threw away Zhao Ziyu, who did not want to resist and cooperate with him at all. The knife turned between his slender fingers. He stepped forward, covered 008's face, and pierced the heart of AI with the knife. Do you deserve it? The protagonist's spiritual force is strong enough to be the king in the spiritual world. At the moment when 008 appeared, Xie Sui had already touched the door of Rubik's Cube. In the quiet corridor of the hospital, the vast blue light waves spread silently. At the moment when the mirror broke, he heard the scream of God King outside the Rubik's Cube, or the voice of another world. Dash. Song Yu woke up and found something strange. Cold white flames suddenly spread around him and burned the book to ashes. They formed a line, a piece, and a surface, covering the sky and the earth in the depths of this empty universe. An intersection corner of the Rubik's Cube, which he had been focused on attacking, was finally torn apart. Countless protagonists in the world realized that they had been deceived. The accumulated anger and hatred gushed out. It became a raging fire and turned back to God King. The raging fire burned his body, and the heart-wrenching pain was not enough. All the pain, suffering, and tears would continue on his body. Dash. The screams were endless. Song Yu heard the sound of cracking. The Rubik's Cube, which had been static for a long time, was turning. Streamers of light came one by one, from top to bottom, from left to right. 20 billion years ago, the most glorious God-level civilization that had ever existed was forcibly erased by the rules of the universe, and now the only remaining product was also about to die. The cube was like a piece of glass, full of spider silk, and shattered in an instant. Then it fell to the ground. It was like the end of a civilization. White flames ignited in the black space. The illusory and absurd spiritual world. Song Yu stood up straight and looked at the familiar figure who was walking over on the flames. The sparks burned the barren and cold frozen earth. This time, you saved me from the darkness. Chapter 105. Song Yu woke up. After the torment in the Rubik's Cube world, he was very weak. In the real world, he fell into the water and caught a cold. His face was pale, and he didn't seem to be in good condition. His family wanted him to stay in the hospital for more than 10 days, and he even spent the new year here. From the looks of it, Ma Xiaoding wasn't wrong. She jinxed him. Song Weining was almost scared to death by him. Thinking of the day he got into trouble, she was angry and anxious. I told you, the women of the Xie family are crazy. I told you not to interfere, and I told you not to get involved, but you didn't listen. Is it comfortable to stay in the hospital? Song Yu smiled at her and didn't intend to explain. This matter was too mysterious and couldn't be explained clearly. Since he dared to interfere, he wasn't afraid anymore. What happened had nothing to do with Qin Qiuyun. It was useless for Qin Qiuyun to drag him into the water. It wasn't like he couldn't swim. In the end, he shook off that crazy woman and found his way back to the shore. His soul was just separated from his body by the system and the Lord God. Song Weining peeled an orange and sighed. Qin Qiuyun is dead, and Xie Lingshu has done all kinds of evil. The wedding was cancelled, and she's gone crazy. What is this? Evil people have evil karma? Song Yu didn't care about these people's endings. He was about to ask about Xie Sui when he saw the door of the ward open. Xie Sui walked in with something in her hands. His words stopped on the tip of his tongue. Song Weining also saw her anger towards the Xie family. She sat on Xie Sui's lap and held her breath. Her expression was very bad. Xie Sui paused for a moment and said, "I'm here to bring some food to Song Yu." Song Weining's face was cold, and he was unmoved. Song Yu was a little preoccupied now. He urged his sister, "Isn't your idol's new drama premiering today? Aren't you rushing back to watch it? I'm almost recovered. Sister, you don't have to accompany me. Please don't disturb your brother and sister-in-law's alone time." Song Weining, ? Song Weining, it was unfortunate that the family had raised such an ingrate. She glared fiercely at Song Yu, gritted her teeth, and left. Finally, only the two of them were left in the ward. Song Yu had a lot of things to say to him, so he immediately sat up straight. Xie Sui pressed down on his hand and raised her eyebrows. "You're already in this state, and you still want to torment me?" Now, he had really returned to his weak and sickly persona. Song Yu smiled and said, "It's okay. I'm not afraid." Xie Sui stared at him with her dark eyes and said, "I'm scared." Song Yu was stunned and coughed embarrassedly. Oh. The Qin family was in a mess because of Qin Qiuyun. After Zhao Ziyu got rid of 008, the memories of his previous life disappeared. He had returned to being the arrogant and even a little mean eldest grandson of the Zhao family. After this incident, Song Yu basically had no opinion of them. Gentle control was fake. In their previous life, none of them had gained anything from Xie Sui. Without those stories, their hatred was unnecessary. When Chairman Song came to pick him up from the hospital, he happened to see him playing with his phone and being fed porridge by Xie Sui. Chairman Song's sunny mood instantly fell to the bottom. Song Yu saw his father almost bite the spoon. Xie Sui was stunned, but she was very calm. She immediately put the food on the table and politely called out, "Uncle Song." However, no matter how he pretended to be obedient, it was useless. To Chairman Song, Xie Sui's identity was no longer the son of a business partner, but a wolf cub who wanted to kidnap his son. All the praise he had for this child at the beginning was gone, and only hatred was left. Because of this, Chairman Song rejected Song Yu's request to study in Jing City again. Chairman Song said, "Don't even think about seeing Xie Sui again, let alone studying in the same school. I was wondering why you were so obedient when you went to Jing City. It turned out that you prepared such a big surprise for me." Song Yu tried to persuade him with reason. "No, Dad, we have to be reasonable." "Shut up." It was useless. Chairman Song was irritable and didn't listen to any advice. The blue parrot gloated, "Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully a poor young man." It was a mess. Needless to say, it was Song Weiniang's new teaching. He didn't know where he read it from. Song Yu twitched the corner of his mouth and finally begged his mother. It was the first time in his life that he acted like a spoiled child, which made his mother laugh. Song Weiniang was on the phone with her boyfriend. She was so shocked that she got goosebumps. She rolled her eyes and replied, "I didn't hang up. I was just scared. My brother was acting like a spoiled child. Why shouldn't you be surprised? You won't talk like that when you know what my brother is like." Hearing this, Mama Song was half amused and half angry. "How can you talk about your brother like that?" Song Weiniang only wanted to chuckle. She did not have such an ingrate brother who would side with outsiders. After his brother came back, he didn't know the truth. His brother also joined the team to fight against Chairman Song's dictatorship. Chairman Song. Family misfortune. Family misfortune. Later, Chairman Song agreed to let him go to Jing City. Originally, they were busy and often not at home. Seeing that Song Yu liked Jing City so much and his grandmother was there, they let him go. Xie Sui also went back to Jing City. Xie Xinian had his own arrangements. Xie Sui was still underage. If she stayed in a city, she would be involved in the disputes of a lot of brothers and sisters, which was not good for him. Besides, it was not like he didn't know anything. He could slowly take over the affairs of the Xie family from a distance. Sometimes he was surprised by his son's scheming. In February, the snow melted. The new year had just passed and the streets were lively. Song Yu returned to Jing City. It happened to be the day before the registration, and the first class had a gathering. Ma Xiaoding had been practicing his cooking skills for a month. He was taken to the villa by his classmates and volunteered to be the head chef. Of course, after he cooked a plate of scrambled eggs with green pepper, everyone regretted it. Jiang Chunian couldn't bear to see him wasting food, so he grabbed his collar and pulled him away from the kitchen. Ma Xiaoding was angry and dissatisfied. "What are you doing? Are you looking down on me?" Jiang Chunian: "Yes, yes, yes. Please don't show off your cooking skills. I still want to live for another 60 years. Song Yu was in charge of shopping. When he was shopping in the supermarket and Xie Sui, He received a strange look from the girls. They hid aside, blushing and whispering. He took a bag of mint candy and said as if he was used to it, "If they know that we are already in a relationship, will they scream with excitement?" Xiesui chuckled. "Are you going to make it public? I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Song Yu immediately said, "No, no, no. It's better to keep a low profile in high school. Let's do it in private." Xiesui, why? Song Yu, studying is the most important thing. As the top student in the grade, you should set an example. Xiesui said slowly, "Oh, I thought you were enjoying the feeling of being in a relationship." Song Yu, enjoy my ass. The dishes were all served. Ma Xiaoding's plate of scrambled eggs with green pepper was placed in the middle of the table. Everyone disliked it because it was dark and they couldn't see the ingredients at all. He was the only one who didn't know his place. He stood up and took chopsticks to each person's bowl. Yang said proudly, "Don't stand on ceremony. Good brother." Shi Bowen was the only good brother who supported him. He scrunched up his face and took a bite with his chopsticks. After a moment of silence, he ran to the toilet and vomited. Amidst the mocking laughter, Ma Xiaoding touched his nose and sat down. He refused to admit his mistake and said, squeamish, "Of course, there were games to be played at the party. The last time they played Truth or Dare in the KTV, there were 2 historical puzzles that the group was still brooding over. This time, they played a few more rounds like last time." Jiang Chunian took out his cards and said excitedly, "I don't need to explain the old rules. The king is the trump card, and the little king is the joker. There must be a dare in 3 rounds. After saying that, he winked at Song Yu. Song Yu. He knew they wouldn't let him go. The joker in the first round was Ma Xiaoding, and the trump card was Shi Bowen. Shi Bowen ate a mouthful of dark cuisine. His whole body was still immersed in pain. He asked the truth, "Did you only learn how to open a gas tank in the past month?" Ma Xiaoding was so angry that his face turned red and white. He shouted hoarsely, "Of course not. Judge Jiang Chunian. You didn't even tell the truth. Drink a glass as punishment." Ha 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 ha. After a few rounds, the joker was finally in Song Yu's hands. Truth. Song Yu didn't even think about it. The group of people, was the question of the century finally going to be revealed? The one who got the joker was a boy. He said with a cheeky smile, "Brother Yu, do you remember the last time we played, you said that you dreamed every day? Can you tell me now? Who is the person in your dream?" Song Yu paused and subconsciously turned to look at Xiesui next to him. Xiesui looked at him quietly and smiled. Instantly, a warm current spread to his limbs. In this warm and cheerful atmosphere, Song Yu looked at the boy and said calmly, "The person in my dream is my deskmate." Everyone? My deskmate. Your deskmate. Do you know who your deskmate is? Ma Xiaoding was so shocked that her chopsticks fell to the ground. Jiang Chunian covered his mouth excitedly to stop himself from laughing out loud. Song Yu was quite calm after he finished speaking. With the prestige of a school bully, everyone could only tremble and hold back their gossipy hearts as they drew the cards again. They didn't know if they were lucky or unlucky, but this time, the joker fell into Xiesui's hands, and the trump card was in Song Yu's hands. The second question of the century was about to be solved. However, why did the trump card have to be in Song Yu's hands? Song Yu glanced at them. Ma Xiaoding more or less guessed something and chose to turn off the microphone. The girls had nothing to do with the boys gossiping. Shi Bowen sighed and said, "Brother Yu, please fulfill one of our wishes. We've been thinking about it for a year." A boy said, "That's right, Brother Yu. I was just cuckolded today. Please give me a chance." Jiang Chunian couldn't stop laughing and said cheekily, "Brother Yu, my wife is in labor. She's waiting to hear the answer and go back to deliver the baby." Song Yu really had to hand it to them. He lowered his head and looked at the trump card. He didn't know why, but he felt a little hurt when he touched it. Under everyone's expectant gazes, he asked the question that he already knew the answer to. He said softly, "Who was the person you said you liked last time?" Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. He actually asked the question. The air suddenly fell silent. They thought that it would be a very long process of waiting. Unexpectedly, their school hunk didn't even think about it. His beautiful peach blossom eyes stared unblinkingly at the person in front of him. He curled his lips and said with a smile, "I like her. My deskmate. I dreamt of my deskmate. My deskmate in the dream." The two unsolved mysteries were solved together today, and then a shocking piece of news exploded for them. Everyone felt like they were dreaming. Their eyes and mouths were wide open, and they didn't know what to say. Bowen was more familiar with them. As early as last semester, he could tell that the atmosphere between them wasn't right. He fixed his glasses in a daze and broke the silence. "Brother Yu, thank God. You're together?" Xie smiled but didn't say anything. Song Yu didn't deny it. Silence. Once again, there was a dead silence. Then, Jiang Chunian couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. He stirred up the stiff atmosphere again. Ha 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 ha. Jiang Chunian slammed the table excitedly. "I knew it. I knew it." Liang Yingying received Song Yu's cold gaze. Her body stiffened, and she quickly covered her friend's mouth. She scolded, "Just say it, just say it. What did you say? Did I say you could speak?" Everyone seemed to wake up from a dream. Some were surprised, some were excited, and some were on the verge of collapse. It was bustling with noise and excitement, and everyone was talking at once. "No. You're really together. Fuck, I'm going to tell all the girls in school that their two Prince Charming are together. I can borrow their shoulders to make them cry. Woo woo, Sway Yu and an Israel." Although Ma Xiaoding had guessed most of it, it was another matter to hear confirmation from the person in question. He puffed out his chest and began to yang with a group of people. "Look at how scared you are. Isn't it obvious? I guessed it a long time ago. Brother Yu and God Xie are so gay. How can they be straight?" When he got excited, he slammed the table emotionally. The details determine success or failure. When I opened my eyes, I already knew that something was wrong. Jiang Chunian pulled Liang Yingying's hand away. "You're a hindsight person. Keep bragging." Song Yu hadn't told him about that stupid divination yet. He pushed the plate in front of him. 666. "Since you're so good, I'll reward you with a plate of green pepper scrambled eggs." Ma Xiaoding, the group, ha 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 ha. On the first day of school, the forum exploded again. Sway Yu and an Israel, main post, "I'm so excited that I'm incoherent. It's official announcement, woo woo. Thank you to the sisters of Class 1, thank you to the heavens, thank you to the game Truth or Dare. Mom, I'm really knocked on the head. 1-1, 2-1, 3-1. Don't just drink during the new year. You're still dreaming in broad daylight. 4-1, she's not lying. I'm at the scene, I can testify that it's real. 5-1, fuck. Arth and woo 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 flooded the screen, suppressing the comments of the haters. 433-1, fuck. I sat up in shock. Is this real? 434-1, the expert in social love studies is here. It's real. Stop guessing. 435-1, Doctor of Emotional Science. I'm telling the truth. 436-1, undergraduate degree from Harvard University. Sway Yu and an is locked. 437-1, attending Rainbow Flower Kindergarten. They're really together. 438-1, ha 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 ha. They're together. During the evening self-study session on the first day of school, Class 1 was full of undercurrents. Many people's eyes darted back and forth between Song Yu and Xie Sui. However, due to their prestige last semester, no one dared to go up and ask directly. The evening self-study session, which was already impatient, immediately became crazy after the sudden power outage. Bowen was speechless. Jingcheng First High School. Jingcheng is a pit. Guess what our workers broke today? Ma Xiaoding was very used to it. Come, let's tell ghost stories. Ghost stories? This reminded Song Yu of the day when the internet cafe had a power outage. Now that he thought about it, that kiss on Xie Sui must have been intentional. After school started, Xie Sui and Song Yu sat in the middle of the seats with a bunch of people beside them. Ma Xiaoding said gloomily, "Do you know? Actually, people have died in this classroom of Jingcheng First High School. There were quite a lot of sudden deaths. One of them was very strange. She was young and under a lot of pressure. She ran to the classroom in the middle of the night to commit suicide." Song Yu said, "Was she a very gloomy girl? When she died, her eyes were still open and shrunk to a point. Amazing. A ghost story could be used again in a different location without changing the sentence." Ma Xiaoding. QWQ. However, when Song Yu mentioned it, his memory of the internet cafe was also evoked. As if something flashed through his mind, he suddenly reacted. "Yes. Brother Yu. That day in the internet cafe, when I squatted down to look at you, your face and ears were red. When the power outage happened, you were leaning against God Xie. Fuck. So you had an affair at that time? What happened that day? Shi Bowen. Her? Is it the time you said God Xie made Brother Yu cry?" Song Yu wanted to pull Ma Xiaoding's head off. "Shi Bowen, God Xie, quickly explain. I'm almost imagining a lot of things that shouldn't have happened." Xie Sui chuckled softly and said in a lazy voice, "That day, Song Yu asked me if he could. The words kiss me were stopped by a mint candy. Song Yu stuffed a candy into his mouth to stop him from saying anything. He didn't want to talk about what happened that day. Aren't you afraid of the dark? Come on, wake yourself up." Xie Sui obediently held the candy in his mouth and the tip of his tongue circled Song Yu's fingertip. Song Yu felt as if he had been electrocuted. Ma Xiaoding was anxious. "Brother Yu. Don't be shy." At this moment, the call came. Old Cheng also walked in. In the entire classroom, Ma Xiaoding's voice was the loudest. Old Cheng was so angry that his face twitched. "Ma Xiaoding, what are you doing? You're rebelling on the first day. You're so loud that the entire building is filled with your voice. Do you want to come up and perform a song?" The energetic young man was instantly dispirited. Song Yu clapped. "Go up, don't be shy." Ma Xiaoding, sob, sob, sob. When he was dragged up, it was as if he was giving an award speech. "Thank you, everyone, for thinking so highly of me. As a fierce man, I'll bring everyone a song today," Lin Shuangqiu said firmly, Pink Memories. The Steel Man. The background music had already started playing. Everyone was laughing uncontrollably. Ma Xiaoding frowned and sang Summer. Summer passed quietly in his rough voice. Xie Sui had originally accompanied Song Yu to school here as if he was playing around. He moved out of the school to make it easier for him to deal with the city's matters. When he moved, Song Yu went to Grandma Chen's place to help him get his things. At night, there were very few people on Lianyun Street. There was only the cold moonlight and lights. Song Yu remembered something and said, "Do you still remember that Hong Maro from the beginning?" Xie Sui, Song Yu said, "I saw him the day before yesterday or yesterday. His hair was dyed back, and now he's wearing sunglasses under the overpass with a group of his buddies to read fortunes. His business is not as good as the one next door." Xie Sui, "You actually still remember him?" Song Yu was a little proud when he said this. "Are you kidding? I was the street bully of Lianyun Street back then, and he was the first person I defeated. A milestone." Xie Sui, "Amazing." Suddenly, there was the sound of dogs barking on the street. "Little Yellow, where are you going, hey?" A woman's anxious and distressed voice came from the fork in the road. She was about to enter the corridor when the dog she was leading suddenly became disobedient and ran in a direction happily. Woof, woof, woof. Song Yu was about to tell Xie Sui about his glory days. He stared and saw a dog running straight towards him. It was twice the size of the dog that ran towards him on the playground last time. Fuck. His adrenaline was rapidly secreted, and his subconscious reaction was to run. He pulled Xie Sui and ran. When a dog saw a person running, it generally ran and chased after him. It stuck out its tongue and barked even more excitedly. The owner was flustered and exasperated. Hey. He had only been to Lianyun Street a few times, so of course, He was not familiar with it. Song Yu ran around the alley as soon as he saw it. He didn't know whether he wanted to make the dog dizzy or himself dizzy. After all, the dog's leash was still in the hands of the dog's owner. She was annoyed and dragged the dog back. A woo! Little Yellow let out a howl. The owner said, "Your food is gone." The wind blew past his ears, and the streetlights were slightly dazzling. "It's okay." Xie Sui had run enough with him. She smiled and grabbed Song Yu's hand, saying, "The dog is gone." Only then did Song Yu stop. He turned around and narrowed his eyes. They were in a familiar place. Chapter 106. September, the start of a university. Song Weiniang sat in the driver's seat and looked out of the window. The road was crowded and cars were lined up in a long line. Judging by the situation, it would take at least half an hour to get there. She frowned. Did all the universities in the university town agree to report on the same day? Why are there so many people today? Let's wait. Song Yu's tone was indifferent as he leaned against the passenger seat and played games. The popular Immortal Path from 3 years ago was finally released as a mobile game. Song Yu controlled the fairy doctor in green and turned the healer into an assassin. After taking the last drop of blood from the boss, the words pass appeared on the screen. In the team channel, Ma Xiaoding and the others were exclaiming 666 and holy shit. Song Yu had played with them for so long that he didn't have much hope for this group of rookies, who he had to play as a nanny to be able to move. Song Weiniang tilted her head and scolded, "It's easy for you to say. Not everyone is as free as you. I have a date in an hour. Your brother-in-law is waiting for me at the Star Shore for dinner. If I'm late, he'll be angry again. Virgo boys are hard to appease when they're angry." Song Yu was speechless. "You make it sound like you have a boyfriend." After Song Weiniang fell in love, she couldn't mention anything about her boyfriend when she was in the same space as her. As long as she had the chance, she would have to endure an hour of uninterrupted PDA. For example, now. Song Weiniang rested her chin on one hand and smiled brightly. "Although I said that, I didn't really appease him. He was always the one who appeased me, even if I did something wrong first. Just like last time, I was so busy that I forgot about Memorial Day, but hey, what are you doing?" Song Yu didn't want to listen to these old stories anymore. He couldn't take it anymore and chose to get out of the car. "Xie Sui is rushing me. I think it might be faster to walk to a university." Song Weiniang was stunned and gritted her teeth. "It's that Xie guy again." Song Yu lied to her. Xie Sui didn't rush him. In fact, Xie Sui was currently overseas and would only be back in a week. Song Yu had been to a university countless times, so he was very familiar with the place. As soon as they entered, they were greeted by all kinds of red awnings. The seniors from each school were enthusiastically helping the freshmen carry their luggage and patiently answering their questions. When Song Yu walked over with his suitcase, there was a moment of soft exclamation in the welcoming scene. As a century-old school, the opening of a university was something that deserved to be reported by the media. There were many reporters present. Song Yu's appearance was undoubtedly another shocking gimmick for them. Similar to a most handsome freshman hash, 2 photos of Song Yu would quickly become a trending topic. However, based on what happened to his sister, Chairman Song would probably remove him soon. After Song Weiniang graduated from university, she successfully sneaked into the Song Entertainment Company and became the vice president. She didn't have any real power, but she had a lot of suitors, including many celebrities. She didn't have a high profile, but her appearance and identity were there. A few photos instantly attracted her a lot of fans. Now, she already had a group of fans on Weibo. The netizens called her Miss. Of course, this wasn't important. The important thing was that Song Weiniang's Weibo didn't have any big or small accounts. She didn't need to maintain a persona. Almost a quarter of the people on Weibo were complaining about Chairman Song. Therefore, Chairman Song, who was famous on the list of rich people and was admired by everyone, became an old man from a wealthy family. He was unaware that he was singing out of tune, And his song was heartbreaking, and every day on WeChat is poisonous chicken soup. Young man, don't panic. Miss Song used to share Chairman Song's songs on her Weibo. A group of bootlickers commented on her Weibo. Dad, I'm willing to give up my ears for you. I was a fan of Chairman Song when I was alive. After listening to Chairman Song's songs, I understand Chairman Song's circle of friends even more. His father was calm outside and talked about the internet economy and the age of traffic in interviews with reporters. At home, he showed his true colors and flew into a rage. After dinner, it was time for his personal speech, and the only audience was Lan Mao. Song Yu caused a big sensation on the first day he reported to school. After falling in love, people's temperament would change a little. Compared with the cold and eccentric young man at the beginning of Jing City No. 1 Middle School, now he was not so unapproachable at first sight. As he grew taller, the delicate feeling disappeared and turned into a bright and compelling handsomeness. The 4 people in the dormitory came from all over the country. On the first day, they were a little restrained, but later they chatted freely. After knowing that Song Yu had a boyfriend, the other 3 people were stunned. On the one hand, they were surprised by Song Yu's sexual orientation. On the other hand, they were surprised by the man's appearance. The new school beau fell for him in high school. Song Yu didn't want to keep them in suspense. He smiled and said, "He's also from a university. See you later." After Song Yu went to bed, he didn't sleep. Compared with the other roommates who were not used to being away from home on their first night, he was very calm and chatted with Xie Sui. "Xie Sui, have you decided to live on campus?" Song Yu, "Yes, I've already met my roommates." Xie Sui, "Okay." Song Yu, "Do you have time now? Come on, accompany me to the game." Song Yu was addicted to the Immortal Way during the summer vacation. This game was developed by the Song Group. There was still a big gap between mobile games and client-side games, and there were many things that needed to be improved. The coming-of-age gift his brother gave him was the shares of the Extreme Shadow Game Company. The Immortal Way mobile game was the first project he handled. However, there was already a complete team for the operation and development of the game. Instead of saying that it was Song Yu's task, it was more like a gift from his brother to let him do whatever he wanted in the game. The first change he made was to change some of the attributes of the professions. It made the game more versatile and could be used to attack or assist. Otherwise, how could he play as an assassin and a healer? Xie Sui endured the sleepiness and logged in with him. She went to a few places with little interest. The graphics of the game in the Immortal Way were very realistic. The outline of the leaves was vivid in the golden sunlight. The instance of the Red Lotus Hell was always there, and the Path of 3 Lives was like fire. Out of selfishness, Song Yu designed this place as a place where couples could increase their intimacy. He gave his first kiss here. Wasn't it reasonable to commemorate it? When Xie Sui first found out about it, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looked at him for a long time. Song Yu was embarrassed by her stare. He pretended to complain. Who would choose such a creepy place for a date? The developers are really brainless. When it was 1 o'clock in the game, he was urged to go to sleep by Xie Sui. The next day was the last day of registration. After that, it was military training. Song Yu and Song Weining made a phone call. Song Yu said, "I think the Immortal Way needs a game ambassador. Does your company have anyone to recommend? The kind that doesn't cost money. Just treat it as free support for your brother's career. Let's achieve a win-win situation." Song Weining smiled and said slowly, "You should ask yourself first if you're worthy." Song Yu raised his eyebrows. "Didn't Lan Maro tell you not to bully the poor?" Song Weining, "Heh. Now you're telling me this. Back then, my coming-of-age ceremony was only a house. Your coming-of-age ceremony was shares of the company. Do you remember what you said when I protested?" Song Yu, "Siblings don't count overnight debts. Trust me, if you pay a cent more today, you can choose a villa next year. Like hell I'll believe you. Let your boyfriend invest in you. Can't the young master of the Xie family afford this?" Song Weining sneered and hung up the phone. He didn't want to bother with this ingrate of his brother. He even wanted to post him on Weibo. During the military training, Song Yu's charm was fully displayed. Every day, there would be female seniors shyly coming over to deliver water. There would also be a bunch of people coming over to hit on him when he ate in the cafeteria. The bold ones even asked him to the corner of the field to confess. At that time, Song Yu was chatting with Xie Sui. The girl who pulled him over was petite and cute. She had short hair and was less than 1.6 meters tall. She stuttered for a long time when she said that she liked him. Song Yu saw that she had invited him in public. If he didn't agree, she would be too embarrassed, so he walked over slowly. Now, he felt that she was a good way to disperse the peach blossoms around him. Hence, when the girl was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak, Song Yu said calmly, "I'm sorry, my boyfriend told me not to accept the girl." In high school, he would say, "Although I can't meet someone better than me, I can still live with it." However, when he saw the tears in the girl's eyes, he smiled, nodded politely, and left. Xie Sui replied to his phone. "Song Yu, wait a moment. A girl pulled me to the corner of the field to confess. Let me think about how I should reject her." Xie Sui, so why were you pulled to the corner of the field? Song Yu, a certain young master of the Xie family closed his phone and booked a plane ticket back to China. My boyfriend told me not to accept it. A university was once again in an uproar because of this new school hunk. Song Yu's thoughts were pretty good. However, some things couldn't be avoided. After knowing that he had a boyfriend, some people's first reaction wasn't that he already had a lover, but that he liked men. For example, a third-year senior from the same major immediately started a crazy pursuit plan. His roommates were filled with righteous indignation and even fear because of this. They felt that that person's behavior was a little crazy. However, Song Yu didn't take him to heart at all. Once, on the way back to the dormitory, he was followed. He called Chairman Song while pressing that person against the wall and beating him up. On the other end of the phone, Chairman Song was puzzled. "Why is there someone crying? Aren't you in the dormitory? What are you doing?" Song Yu lifted the trembling senior who had been beaten black and blue and said calmly, "Punish evil and promote good. However, this is not a matter. The business between us is how much money to pay." Chairman Song. This unfilial son of his was infuriating. He was so angry. Song Yu told the counselor about what happened that night. He was afraid that this idiot would do the same thing to the others. After receiving a lot of education, this person became even crazier and began to spread rumors about him. For example, his boyfriend was fake and he was being kept by an old and ugly man. Song Yu, you really don't want to hit this kind of idiot in the face. You just want him to get lost. Xie Sui returned just in time for the last day of the freshman's military training, which was also the opening ceremony. He had been absent for so many days, but he was still the freshman representative. Song Yu didn't believe that there weren't any unspoken rules. However, Xie Sui was indeed outstanding. Just like when he went on stage at the beginning of the high school, when he went on stage, there was complete silence and he attracted everyone's attention. Similarly, the man on the stage was sitting in the last row. He was elegant in a suit. Separated by the lights and years, just like when he told himself in the auditorium of Jing City. The future is like the sea, and the future is long. Song Yu turned his head and laughed out loud. Time was long, but the stars were bright and there was hope for everything. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.